Hi, and welcome back to Your Puppy Blueprint, where you can stop guessing, wondering, and Googling how to have a well-behaved puppy and discover how to turn the chaos to calm. I'm your host, Kelly Fahey, and I'm joined by Barbara Hodel. Before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about Barbara. Barbara is the president of the Pet Professional Guild in Australia. She's also the author of How to Love and Survive Your Teenage Dog. Barbara has been running her own dog training business, Good Dog, on the northern beaches of Sydney for over 14 years, specializing in teenage and rescue dogs, offering classes and in-home consultations for young dogs, as well as workshops for typical teenage challenges such as recall and loose leash walking. Barbara has also firsthand experience in rescue from her time as the rehabilitation trainer at the Animal Welfare League. She has been involved in dog training for the last 20 years and has completed her certificate number 4 in companion animal services with the Delta Society in 2007. In 2015, she attained her diploma in canine behavior science and technology at the Companion Animal Sciences Institute in Canada. Barbara also completed Carolina Westland's advanced animal training in 2021. She competes in dog sports of agility and Rally-O with Shelby, a German short-haired pointer, on master level. Chillax, one of Shelby's puppies, competes in Rally-O and received his Rally Novice title in October of 2019. He's just starting out in agility. She is also a registered breeder with Dogs Noseworks, and Shelby had her first litter in December 2014 and her second and last one in 2017. Barbara holds a master's degree in modern European history and economics from the University of Bern. That's in Switzerland. And she has a master's of, I wasn't sure where that was. It was in Switzerland. And she has a master of business administration from Southern Cross University in Australia. In addition, she has depth of experience in adult education and training, having taught high school and university students in Bern, college students in Sydney, as well as middle and top management employees of large public corporation in Switzerland. She has quite the resume. And today she's going to talk to us about from puppies to teenagers. Welcome, Barbara. I'm really excited about this topic.
Me too.
I know this is you. You're like the teenage guru.
Yeah, well, the reason for that is Chillax, the model for my book. He was a bit of a challenging teenager, but he has come good now that he's 5 years old. So I do really think I do understand what people go through when they come from this cute puppy, and then all of a sudden you go, oh my God, it's not a puppy anymore.
Yeah, and for this event, we're talking a lot about the challenges puppy parents face. We're debunking some myths, we're providing great advice and helpful strategies, but everyone's puppy is going to cross over into their teenage phase at some point. And this is a really important topic to talk about. I keep saying they're all important because they are. Like, when you have a puppy, there's so many critical pieces. But we might still call our young dogs puppies, but when do our dogs actually become teenagers?
The interesting thing, and a lot of people are taken by surprise, depending on the breed you're having, your puppy might become a teenager at 6 months.
Right.
This is especially true with the terriers and other small breeds, or even some of the working breeds. They mature fairly early. They change to teenage dogs fairly early. And everybody's astonished and then goes, where has my cute puppy gone? And now I have this stroppy teenager. And if you Google, Dr. Google, there's so much information on puppies, but there's really limited information, or limited good information, on once that changes to teenagers. And also, I don't know about what's happening in the States, but here in Australia, it has become fairly common to do a puppy preschool. So you do get some support while your puppy is still young, but teenage dogs or classes for young dogs, much less common.
Yeah, there's that piece in between that's kind of missing in a lot of places because, like I said, we talk about our puppies. I mean, Kazoo is 9 months old. I still call him a puppy, but I know he's a teenager. But I think we're in that mentality where we have a puppy, so we have puppies, and then all of a sudden we have adult dogs, and there's that phase in between.
And it seems that we seem to miss, as humans and pet parents, that this is a phase that everybody has to go through. I mean, it's humans, dogs, cats, and it's a normal phase, but we somehow seem have to miss it in when we talk about dogs, and everybody is really astonished or challenged by this phase. And it's also the phase where a lot of dogs actually end up in pounds,
Right.
or in shelters, because no one expected the cute pup to become, well, a teenager.
Yeah, like that puppy license expires and they go from, oh, my sweet cute puppy, to, I don't know what's wrong with my puppy. Nothing's wrong with your puppy. They're just going through a different developmental stage. And our puppies aren't only growing in size, they're growing developmentally as well. Why are young teenage dogs so different to puppies?
The main thing is, a lot of people talk about hormones, and that might have some influence, but the main issue with young dogs or teenage dogs is that the parts of the brain develop at different rates. So I don't want to go too much into this, but put it on a very basic level, the front part of the brain that is concerned with control, keeping emotions under control, good decision making, analysis, things like thinking tasks, that develops later. The back part that's concerned with emotions, aggression, if you want, reactions to scary things or new things, that matures first. So these poor guys try to live in a world, and we have to admit, our world is not made for dogs, even at the best of times. And even for young dogs, it becomes really difficult. And these guys try to make decisions with emotions only, until the front part is catching up. So it's a building site, and nothing really working. So, and we have these dogs are doing the very best. They just can't. It's not how things are. And if you go back to teenagers in the human world, we call them the P-platers here in Australia, because I'm P-plate. And they drive erratically. They take too many risks. And we know there is a lower proportion of, especially male P-plate drivers, are involved in accidents. And it's exactly the same thing with dogs. An over proportion of young dogs are involved in accidents in one way or the other by making the wrong decision, barking at a wheelie bin, barking at a bag on the floor, or a person in a fluoro vest. They just can't cope.
Yeah. And you talk about that decision-making process. I don't know that any of us, either if we've had teenagers or we know somebody with a teenager, they're not always good at the decision-making process. But again, it's all part of a developmental stage. And there's nothing wrong with our puppies. They're not being difficult. They're not giving us a hard time. If anything, they're having a hard time, right? They're trying to, there's just a lot going on with that.
I think there's too much going on. And then a lot of people revert to trying to run their dogs into the ground every single day by providing more and more physical exercise. And all they're doing is they're creating a really fit dog. And then they can't get that fit dog tired anymore because they're way past that. But they forget to provide mental stimulation for the teenage dogs, and also teaching them to be calm. I mean, no dog, puppies, you only have two speeds: crazy or dead to the world.
Yeah, lazy or crazy, I call it.
And it's then we try to provide more and more stimulation on the physical level, and forget that we really need to provide more and more mental stimulation, and actually teach them to calm down. Because everybody wants to have calm dogs, but no one is really prepared to put the time in to get calm dogs and teach them relaxation. And then we confuse giving them a cue for a sit stay or a down stay, or God knows what you want to call it. That's not relaxation. That is just asking them to be still for a moment. And if you want to promote calm, you need to have a holistic approach.
Yeah, because asking your dog to stay is very different than your dog relaxing. And as you mentioned, it's something we need to teach our dogs, because it just doesn't come naturally to them. And
well, it doesn't come naturally to us. If anyone who has ever tried yoga, calm the mind, well, good luck with that.
That's a really good point, right? You're supposed to calm your mind and do everything, and it's really hard to do that. And we do expect our puppies, as you said earlier, our world really isn't built for dogs. It does amaze me how well they do and adapt with us, but they really do need to learn how to relax. It's just not a natural behavior for them. And we think when they're kind of resting over there, they're relaxing, but they're not. It's something that needs to be taught.
Yeah, I also think this, like humans, there's just too much stimulation everywhere. I mean, we're on social media the whole time, but dogs have to learn to deal with a lot of noises, funny sights. I mean, dogs, until about 3 or 4 years ago, most dogs would bark at a person walking with a phone like this in the street because they were just not used to that side. It's completely not normal. Most dogs now have adapted to the fact that some people just walk like this in the streets, even walk into them. And I think it's just more and more impressions on their brain that they can't cope with it because it's just too much.
Yeah, it is a lot. I mean, if I always kind of equate it to like, New York City. I live out in the country, and when I go to New York, it is hard for me to cope there. There's a lot of sounds, everything that's going on, and you're on sensory overload when that, and there's a lot. And we talk about the importance of early socialization with puppies and how critical that is, and a puppy sensitive period. But when or does socialization ever stop when we're talking about
I always compare socialization to a muscle. No one expects to be fit for the rest of their lives if they have gone to the gym once. Right. Or no one expects a kid to be socialized for their lives if they have been to one birthday party when they were 5 years old. And with dogs, we do all this stuff when they're really young. Don't get me wrong, I think it's great and it needs to be done. However, it doesn't stop at 16 weeks. It doesn't stop at 12 months. It never stops. Unless you keep that socialization muscle fit, your puppy or your dog then will become less socialized. I do recommend for people with young dogs to at least take them to a new place at least once a week, maybe twice a week. If we get into a rut with our dogs, we take them same walk. We go to the same place. And while they're puppies, we still go, okay, we need to socialize the pup, so we take it out to different places. But then 16 weeks, 18 weeks, 20 weeks, it all comes to an end. And unless you really want to have a dog that is well socialized, I still take my dogs for social visits to the vet, even as grown-up dogs. So they have more positive experiences than negative experiences at the vet. I still take them to different places, like a different coffee shop or a different walk, or you just need to the brain. We cannot stop it, otherwise it becomes a square box, and anything that's outside of that square box they might find challenging or even scary.
Yeah, because just like we can socialize our puppies, as you said, there's a lot to do with puppies. And then we kind of reach that point where like, I'm past that sensitive socialization period, but that doesn't mean we get to kind of like sit back and put our feet up on the hassock. I haven't used that word in a long time. And say, "Ooh, I'm done," because we can unsocialize our puppies too. You bring up a really good point. I mean, if we think about the pandemic, we went from being really social people, going out, seeing people at restaurants, talking to people online, at the grocery store next to us, to all of a sudden not being around anyone. And we were definitely in that a lot longer than we thought we were going to be. And I remember seeing a lot of people as things were opening up more, where you could go out to eat, but it had to be outside. You couldn't go in.
Yep.
And now more people were going out and about, and people were commenting on how it felt weird. Yep. Because for 2 years, we didn't do any of that. We were isolated. We were with like the same core group of people. And then once we were back out in the world again, it felt weird to us, even though we've been doing it our whole life, right?
Yeah. And that's what I mean. That's if we desocialize after whatever old we are, and after 2 years went, oh, I thought the other day, because my brother just came from Switzerland for visiting. I used to go to Switzerland on a regular basis. Now, if I had to go to Switzerland today, I would go, oops, need to go to the airport, need to say, oh, it's all a bit. And I used to do that. Just didn't bother me. And because as I said, it's like exercise. You need to practice what you want them to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, that muscle, if we don't use it,
Yeah.
we're going to lose it a
Wanna
little bit.
go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I actually had seen this a little bit in one of my dogs many years ago. He had some health issues and he was losing some weight, and he was about 2.5, about 2 at this point, probably, maybe a little bit older, probably 2.5. And he was losing some weight. And when we would go out, I had gotten some comments about how he was too skinny. And I'm taking really good care of my dog. Trust me, we were at the vet, there's stuff going on. And I had gotten so many comments at one point that I stopped going out with him because there were people
Yeah.
that were actually rude, as if I was malnourishing my dog or I wasn't taking care of my dog. And that really hurt because we're living at the vet for people. Trust me, he's getting the best care. So we didn't go out for a while. And because of his health issues and everything that was going on, he actually started not feeling great. So then we really weren't going places because he wasn't at his best. Like, I didn't want to drag him all over.
Yeah.
Once we got him all sorted out with his health issues and we kind of went back to normal, I saw the hesitation when we went out. Now, he had been socialized really well, and we had gone out for 2.5 whole years of his life. Then for months, almost many months, probably about 7 months, we didn't go anywhere because of everything that's going on. And I saw how he was looking at the world again, kind of checking it out. He didn't lose everything, but he needed to reacclimate. It wasn't the same.
Yeah. No. And I also do believe we need to understand that there's a lot of talk these days about that we want to create neutral associations with a lot of things. I personally do not really agree with that. I think we need to create positive associations. I firmly believe once your dog has a positive association, let's say humans are the dogs, a lot of situations, training becomes much easier because you have a positive association. This doesn't mean they need to say hello to every single dog they meet. But if you only ever go for neutral, I think we're missing out on a lot of joy in our dogs and ourselves. And this argument, I do, as you said in my bio, I do a fair bit of dog sports. And there's a lot of people in the dog sport world that want their dog only to be focused on them and nothing else. And I say, look, guys, you can do whatever you want, but I do think you deprive your dog of quality in life. And that's why I'm a big fan of actually creating positive association, not just neutral association. For my dogs, they don't need to think I'm the best thing at every point in their lives. They can have their friends. They can have their doggy friends. And I think that's what we owe to them, because if I want to be the only thing in their lives, well, that's a lot of work for me. And I think it also creates completely unnecessary issues with our dogs. So if you're taking your dogs out, I really do think as puppies or young dogs, a lot of young dogs love interacting with a lot of humans, love interacting with a lot of dogs. And it is a normal development in their lives that once they get a bit older, I promise most dogs do not want to talk to every other dog they meet, unless it's a lab, then it's joking.
Right.
But a lot of dogs, it's going to normalize itself. It's like us, you, me. When we were young, or humans in general, kids will talk to most people they meet. They make new friends easily. They're going to interact. Teenagers still do a bit of that. They become a bit more selective. But once you have a certain age, you're not going down to the pub, or at least me not, going to meet random people. And no one has told me I can't do that. It's just the normal way of how people or dogs develop.
Yeah.
And most dogs becomes dog selective at some point, that they only like some dogs.
Yeah. And, I want to circle back to that neutral part that you were talking about, because I subscribe to the exact same theory as you, especially when we're socializing our dogs and doing continuing, socialization. And we could say we can't call it socialization after a certain amount of time, but for the sake of argument's sake, and for lack of a better word, socialization, we want these positive associations, because when our dogs are learning about new things, our puppies are learning about the world, they are kind of determining, is it safe and good? Is it scary and bad? And if it's in that neutral zone, at some point, it's going to tip over, possibly, right? And if it's only neutral and it tips over into the scary and bad bucket, then we've got a dog who now is going to be a little bit more afraid of things, less confident. And this is where those behavioral challenges are going to come in. So we want those positive associations, because neutral seems okay, right? Neutral's not bad, and it's no big deal. But if you think about neutral, I always use the restaurant analogy. If I go to a restaurant and I have an okay meal, it's all right. I'm neutral about it. It's not bad. It's not great. Am I actually going to go back again? Do I want to go back again? Or do I
You
want
certainly don't.
Yeah, or do I want to go to the place where I have, this great meal, the service is fantastic? Because the next time I go out and I got to make a decision, am I going to go to the neutral place, or I'm certainly not going to go to the bad place.
Yeah.
Or am I going to want to go to the good place that I've got a good association with? So that neutral area, while it seems okay, we do want to be mindful of that, because there's some pitfalls to that.
Yeah, and I believe our humans, they need to learn that. I do think classical or respondent conditioning is not used often enough in training. Mm-hmm. We always tend to go to operant, where we teach dogs stuff. Like they sit and then they mark and they give them a treat so they learn how to sit. That's
or like the watch me or something like
that. We all need to, and I'm good with that. However, we really need to make sure that we don't forget about the emotional state those dogs work in. And once you have created this positive association with whatever they need to deal with, it's much easier to teach operant. Mm-hmm. Because it comes natural and there's nothing to be worried about. And I think it's just, I don't get it why we become so hung up on dogs need to be neutral. I don't get it, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. And so I want to touch a little bit on, before we move on, just so people are understanding, because sometimes when we're chatting, we might throw in a little bit of the dog lingo, the dog trainer lingo in there. And we talk about, respondent and operant training. Let's expand a little bit on that so people know exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about these two things.
For operant is when you teach a behavior. So we lure a sit like this, dog sits, we mark with a clicker or a yes and give them a treat. Then it becomes a cue, we mark, we treat. So operant means we're teaching them a behavior. Can be sit, look at me, touch, doesn't really matter. In this instance, we use a reinforcer for a specific behavior. If we work in respondent conditioning, we present treats for presence of stimulus. So we basically try to create a different association or pair stimuli. So dog might be a bit scaredy cat about, let's say, a person in a fluoro vest. Every time the dog sees a fluoro vest, dog gets a treat. He goes, fluoro vest treat. That seems to be a nice thing to be. And the more you create that association or to pair those two stimuli, the more the dog will see fluoro vest, thanks mom, where's the treat, I'm good. And there you create a positive association. And it's important to understand that in that mode, dog doesn't need to do anything except look at the thing or realize that thing is there. So we're not paying for being good, we're paying for presence of stimulus. Mm-hmm. And we all, as trainers and as humans, good to know, these things always happen probably together. So you can also, I see a lot of people, they want to desensitize a dog or counter condition a dog to a scary stimulus, and they use only operant. So they make the dog sit, the dog looks at them and blah, blah, they get a treat. Eventually, the dog probably will change his mind about the stimulus, but it just takes a long, long time. So it's a good idea to know in which modus you're actually operating.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to make sure that everybody knew what we were talking about there. There was a point you said earlier that I wanted to circle back to. Oh, and by the way, I thank you for not saying our ages when we were talking about that before. No. But we talk about as our dogs get older and how we get older, we have less friends, so to speak. And that's true, right? Because when you're young, you invite everybody to your birthday party when you're in kindergarten. And then when you get a little bit older, you might just then, and if you're a girl or a boy, you might just say, well, I'm going to invite the girls to like my tea party, and the boys might do something different. Because as they get older, things change. And as we get older, that circle of friends goes from inviting the whole class to everything to inviting certain people to eventually just inviting that core group and everything. It's no different, right? We don't have 36 good friends at at this age. I mean, maybe some people do, but we generally don't. We have that smaller group of people that are in our nucleus, and that's the same thing for dogs. And I definitely want to talk about that in a little bit more too, because we did touch on that. So I want to make sure that we expand on that. So we'll do that in just a moment. But basically, everything that we're talking about right here and right now, it kind of falls under that whole saying of prevention is better than cure.
Yeah, I firmly believe the more you put in at an early age, the better the outcome is. Look, there is exceptions. Sometimes there is something wrong one way or the other, and we can't help that, and we do all the right things, but it doesn't work out. And I'm getting really annoyed at the good old saying, there's no bad dogs, there's only bad people. I do know really such nice people, and for some reason or the other, it just didn't work out. And I see so many, I would say, average humans that have great dogs for one reason or the other. And I go, how did that happen? So I think it's a bit a combination of both of this or all of this.
Yeah.
And it's important to understand that a lot of behaviors we find challenging in our teenage dogs or in puppies, just normal dogs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just normal, and we need to redirect to something we find more appropriate. It's not their problem, it's our problem. And I also say sometimes, if you have to design your apartment, you work 70 hours a week, 3 kids, big social life, maybe it's not the time to get a dog.
Yeah, they are a lot of work.
Yeah. And if people ask me, what do you think, how much time do you need to spend with the dogs? I can't tell you how much time you need to spend with your dogs, but I'm telling you that I spend 3 to 4 hours every single day with my dogs. Okay, I'm a dog trainer. I love my dogs, but that is the stuff I actively do with them. It's not when we sit together on the couch.
Right.
And that puts a fair few people, oops.
Yeah. And you might get a dog who wants to chill out with you and hang out and everything, but I don't know too many dogs that just want to chill out. I mean, they might chill out at a certain point of the day, but they definitely need something in their day to help them. I mean, if you think about what they do while you're out doing all of your activities, you're out shopping, you're out, having dinner with friends, you're scrolling Facebook, you're reading your Kindle, all of these things that you're doing, you're mentally enriching yourself all day long. And what are your dogs doing while you're gone? And then we kind of expect them to make good decisions and not do the things that we don't want them to do, that we then later on deem as trouble behavior. And as you say, as they get a little bit older and they're in that teenagery phase, they're not actually being difficult. It's just that sometimes maybe they didn't have enough training, the right training, and their needs aren't being met. And so this is where, again, lots of people will relinquish their dogs at this age, and they just need some help and guidance so they can actually flourish into the dog that they're working to be.
Oh, they're just waiting to be a good dog, basically. And this takes a bit more time than what most people think. And look, if you want a dog that relaxes a lot, maybe get an older dog. I have an older dog at the moment. She's 11. Now, guess what? She loves laying on the couch with me.
Yeah.
But even her, and she's 11, I still teach her new stuff. Yeah. And she still goes out every single day. So even at her age.
Yeah, and young dogs aren't for everybody. When you say, older dogs sometimes might be the better choice for some people.
Yeah.
I know plenty of trainers who will never have a puppy. Never. These people
I think overrated.
Yeah, these people are more than qualified to have a puppy, raise a puppy. They know all the stuff, right? And they don't want a puppy because they're not exactly easy. And then you have this great puppy, everything is wonderful, you're teaching your puppy things, everything's going along well, and then you reach that point where you're like, you don't remember anything I told you, you're being stubborn, you're being spiteful. Nope, boom, teenager phase kicks in. Just as you start getting acclimated with your puppy, enter teenager. And so it's definitely, there are lots and lots of trainers who say, you can keep the puppies. I'll take the 2.5-year-old, 3-year-old dogs any day. And that's more their thing. I love it. You're saying puppies are overrated. I am a sucker for a puppy. There's a lot of puppies that have graced our doorways that we have raised for ourselves and for the seeing eye. So we've had a lot of puppies come through here. I guess I'm a glutton for punishment.
Oh yeah, no, don't get me wrong. I love a puppy, but I go, if I get another puppy, I'm gonna make a very conscious decision once I have more time again, because at the moment I couldn't deal with a puppy. Just not enough time, not enough hours in my day.
Yeah, and I bet you there's a lot of people listening right now that they're feeling a little bit of a sigh of relief as, okay, it's not just me. This is a lot of work. There is a lot to do, and there's a reason puppies sometimes people sometimes get second thoughts when they get puppies
Oh
because
yeah, I think most do. Most do. And maybe oh my gosh, what did I do?
what did I do? What did I get myself into? Was
Yeah.
this the right decision? Especially if you're a household where you discuss getting a puppy, but somebody else thought maybe they should get an older dog, and then there was like a compromise somewhere, and then the puppy came home, and now,
Now they have the puppy.
yeah, exactly. And I really like what you said before too. Kind of on the same lines is how there's no bad dogs, only bad owners, and how that's not true because there's plenty of people out there who are doing their best and they're trying their hardest and they're doing all the right things, and it's just not coming together for one reason or another. Puppies, they're not blank slates, like
Nope.
like Google will tell us. And so be easy on yourself and give yourselves permission to just be human with your.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to just look for help. I mean, there's so many people out there who have done it, and I think sometimes here, I don't know about you guys over there, but it's sometimes really hard to get the right advice because, as I said, talk to Google and so many unqualified people out there who are giving freely advice. And you get advice from your neighbor, you get advice from the checkout chick at the pet shop, get advice from
Facebook,
granddad,
everywhere.
anyone who ever had a dog is an expert. And I do believe people should make up their mind and have a trainer or someone they trust and try to follow through with that advice, because otherwise it gets really confusing for the puppies, really confusing for the humans, and that's when it goes sometimes really pear-shaped because it just doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah, and puppies don't come with instructions, right?
No, and they're all different.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say too. Is they're all different. We've had a lot of puppies come through this house. Some of them have given us a run for our money.
Yes, and I will also say I have people contacting me. I can't crate train my puppy. No, don't feel bad.
Right.
Some puppies are much harder to crate train, and sometimes it's also not necessary to crate train. Yeah. There is countries in Europe that have made crates illegal. Look, I wouldn't go that far, but it's some dogs, and I could train some of my dogs crate trains, and with others I've just given up for one reason or the other. And I'd say, okay, it didn't work for me or that dog. Obviously, I teach them other stuff like going to bed or something like this. But some dogs do not feel comfortable in a confined area, contrary to what everybody tells. And I go, you need to go with the puppy. It's not my way or the highway. And sometimes we need to understand, even if it's best practice and even if it's good advice, it just might not suit your pup or dog.
Because it's individual with everything. And again, like I said, we've had a bunch of puppies come through this house. Some have given us a run for our money. And there's no checklist out there that says, in order to have a well-raised puppy, you must do all these things. It's not black and white like that. There's plenty of puppies who don't do well.
The only thing that is black and white for me is the use of aversives. Yes. We're all positive trainers here. I think we need to understand that if you use punishment, you're going to have the side effects, and it's not helpful and it's not going to work. So positive reinforcement management is the way to go these days. We don't do it with kids anymore. It's time we stopped it. And we just treat our puppies as sentient beings with good training in a positive way.
And especially as our puppies get older and we think things are going well. I mean, it was rocky in the beginning too. But then when they hit that teenage phase where people do start thinking like, oh, they're being spiteful, they're being stubborn, and all of those things. Nope, it's that brain. They're just having a little bit of a challenge, making decisions. This is where sometimes more frustration can set in, because you might start feeling like things are getting better. We're finally getting to a point where we're going to survive puppyhood again, teenage years, teenage time enters, and you might start losing your cool. You might get frustrated because by this time, you've had your puppy now for most people quite a few months. and
Yeah.
and we do want to make sure, because we do know that using aversive techniques, punishment-based methods, has its fallout, and it's actually could do the exact opposite of what we're trying to do for our puppies and cause more behavioral problems.
Yeah.
and everything. So absolutely. um we talked about, and I want to circle around to this, how along the lines of socialization, trainers, we touched on this earlier, how you don't have to meet every dog, but we do our best to educate people about not meeting every dog. They don't have to meet every single person. There's more to socialization than that. And it is normal for dogs to become more selective with other dogs as they get older. We touched on that briefly, so let's chat about that for a little bit too.
When we see a puppy, puppies often will, as I said, they're happy-go-lucky and go, yep, there's another friend, there's another friend, there's a new friend. And once they become teenager or 6, 7, 8, 9 months old, they go, okay, nah, I don't like this one too much. And that's when they get a bit into strife at the off-leash area. All of a sudden, they find some dogs a bit, nah, I don't want to be your friend. And I believe this is just a normal way for them to say, okay, we have certain values, we have certain play styles. And sometimes they match and sometimes they don't match. And while puppies still going to rumble with pretty much anyone, a teenage dog will go, nah, don't think so. It's not my style, or it's not the way I want to interact, or they find them challenging. And that we then need to accept that they're going to have the odd, nah, don't like you. It's best to take this calmly, get them out of the situation and match them with someone who is more compatible, for example, to the way they play, or more compatible in size. That said, I do believe a lot of big dogs can play nicely with little dogs. They just need to learn that in a good puppy school, what it means to play with little ones. I'm not a big fan of just the size thing. I think it really depends the play style more than anything else, or how they're inclined. I have a big dog, he's about 37 kilos. He loves all oodle doodles. Don't ask me why, he just loves them. He's way more selective with bigger dogs. So I do think we just need to teach them that this is appropriate. And I also believe at some point, dog parks, off-leash areas where there's randoms will not work for a young dog anymore. And I try to set, for example, that's what I do, try to set my dogs up with playmates. They meet on a regular basis. They know each other. And I find the longer they know each other, the more fun they have playing, because they're so in tune with what the other one says. There's no, oh, is this. They just go, yes, let's have a bit of a go. And they know what's going to happen. And even if it gets a bit rough, the one will say, was a bit too much, thank you very much. And they read each other. So I more believe in setting dogs up once they have a certain age. I want to be careful anyway, pups, but set them up with compatible known quantities. And I just recently introduced a new dog to my 5-year-old, and he loves playing with her.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like a human thing where people think, well, my dog needs to have dog friends, and that's not the case. As again, like we said earlier, as you get older, you'd rather kind of just settle in at home with like your good friends or the other couple friends or whatever, as opposed to going out to some big party. And there's plenty of people who still like to do that, but it's also very individual, and so is it for our dogs. But it's really a human thing where we kind of feel bad, like, well, he doesn't have any friends. Your dog is not pining away at home going, oh, why is nobody calling me? And that play style, as you said, is really important, because you can try to force the dogs to play together, like, the dog up the street, because we want to have a dog friend. That doesn't mean that they're gonna be good friends and mesh well together, because they do, as you mentioned. get a little bit more selective as they get older, and it could be for a variety of different reasons. And then people start thinking that there's something wrong with their dogs because they're getting like growlier at the other dogs, or there's maybe little tiffs, or maybe even a dog fight that happens. There's nothing wrong with somebody's dog. We're just forcing them to be have playmates that they might not want to have.
I personally, I don't go to off-leash areas. I will take my young dogs, means between 6 months and maybe 18 months, to some selected off-leash areas where I know who is there and how dogs interact. But once they're 3-4 years old, it's not my thing. And I have a heart attack if I go and watch a dog park and go,
no, I can't watch it.
No, often it's just an accident waiting to happen.
Yeah.
And no one seems to be caring, and no one seems to be seeing it. And I go, whoops, yeah, I just go home now again.
Yeah, dog parks are hard for dogs. I mean, if you think about how they're set up, you've got dogs in the dog park, you show up, everybody in the dog park's like, who's the new guy coming in? And then we kind of like open the gate, and our dog is now forced to go in with all these other dogs charging at them. It's really overwhelming. I always equate it to like a bar. You don't know who's going to be there. You've got the person who just wants to sit and enjoy their appetizers and their drink and kind of just be left alone. And then you've got the guy over here who's loud, maybe had a little bit too much to drink, who's being overbearing. And there's all sorts of different personalities at these places. And everybody is not going to mesh well together. It's sometimes a little bit of a recipe for disaster. And it doesn't mean that other people have not had good experiences at dog parks, and that's great if they do. But I know doing what we do, we hear more of the problem side of it, which is why we're so hesitant and reluctant, just because we know far too many people who have had really bad experiences. So it's tough. And you can actually go to the dog park and find some friends by just hanging out, because there's probably other people looking to do the same thing. Like, I want to see if I can find some friends for my dogs, and maybe we'll make a match, maybe we won't. But I've known plenty of people who've gone really, really early to the dog park because they want to avoid the craziness. And then they've met other people who are doing the same thing. And so they're both kind of like, oh, shoot, I thought we were going to have the dog park to ourselves. And they get talking, and then maybe those dogs are compatible. And so then they visit each other's houses and have their own private play dates, because these dogs do.
We actually, in our business, we've set up Facebook groups for our teenage and the puppy class, so they can actually get in contact with each other and set up play dates for their dogs without having to go there.
Yeah, it's a great idea, because same thing, just because you kind of took a class together with these dogs doesn't mean they're all going to want to hang out and party together.
No.
You're going to find that these do better together, or these do better together, or just like people. I mean, how many people do we know that a good time for them is just hanging out at home by themselves? They don't want to go other places.
No. And some dogs are just like this.
Yeah. And then when they do go somewhere, they've had enough, right? Like, sure, I'll go hang out for New Year's Eve, but I'm not going to probably stay till 2 a.m. I may not even make it till the ball drops. It's going to depend on the person. So it's all individual. And we do, as humans, kind of think that, they're dogs, they'll all get along. But that's kind of like a really big leap to think that all these personalities and all these beings are always going to be okay together. It's
never going to happen.
Never going to happen. No, it's a little bit of a recipe for disaster. So, that's fantastic. It's so important for people to know that as their dog gets to that teenage phase, which is probably a little bit earlier than they think, they're not being difficult dogs. That brain is working against them.
Pretty much.
So now you have something for our audience today. Do you want to tell them a little bit about it?
I have put together a little PDF for you with my top 10 tips about young dogs or teenage dogs, which you're going to put into the chat or somewhere. And I also put a link to my book, How to Love and Survive Your Teenage Dogs. And I put in a discount for humans watching us talking today.
Awesome. That's fantastic, because if you have a teenage dog, as we've said, They're not being difficult. And Barbara's book is really good. That's why I wanted to have her on. And there's so much more we could talk about. I mean, we could probably talk about each one of these segments plus more, and we could sit here for hours. So her book is a really good resource for you guys. So definitely check it out. If you've got a puppy, you're going to hit that teenage phase. If you're sitting here right now and you're saying, but my puppy's only 6 months old, think about some of the things we were talking about. They're not being difficult. They're probably just having a little bit of a hard time. You've probably got a teenager on your hand. So all of those goodies that Barbara has for you are going to be in the links below this video. So they're going to be nice and easy for you to find. Barbara, this has really been helpful for everybody, helping understand their puppies, teenagers. Do you have any last minute thoughts or advice for anybody before we go?
I think that one of the main things I always point out for teenage and young dogs, it's a phase. And most of us have come through that already because we're a bit older. So it's a phase and they come out the other end and mostly things are just fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really want to thank, you for joining us today and talking about puppies to teenagers. It's a really important topic for everybody to know about. And I want to thank all the puppy parents out there who joined us today. Hang in there. You've got this. You're going to, as Barbara said, you're going to come out of it the other end. You're going to be okay. And don't be afraid to get help if you need it. They are not easy. Puppies, dogs, teenagers, they're not easy. There wouldn't be a whole slew of us dog trainers out there if there was not that help that's needed. So thanks again, everybody, for being with us today. And you have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.